friends, this is another episode of the program Empire of Lies, in which we discuss manipulation and disinformation in the Russian media. The illusion of peace, how Moscow offers. Europe capitulation under the guise of reconciliation. Olga Skabeeva's December 22nd evening edition of 60 Minutes is presented as good news. The end of the Ukrainian conflict is already on the horizon. Donald Trump is supposedly about to decide on a meeting with Vladimir Putin. Lavrov and Rubio are continuing to prepare for the summit, and Hungary represents the interests of peace. At first glance, this seems like diplomatic intrigue. In reality, it's a carefully constructed narrative in which peace means not ending the war, but consolidating its consequences. And Europe is not a mediator, but an obstacle. What sounds like a chronicle of negotiations on air is in fact an ideological project for peace without Ukraine and without Europe. Let's consider what exactly Russia is offering the world in this framework, and why it is important for Europe not to succumb to the illusion of a quick settlement. 1. Peace is coming, but not for Ukraine. The program opens with the words, "The end of the conflict is near." This optimism echoes against the backdrop of reports of new massive strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure, thermal power plants, substations, and oil terminals. Destroyed infrastructure and blackouts are treated not as a tragedy, but as the inevitable backdrop to a future agreement. Then comes the usual substitution of concepts. Russia is allegedly not against peace, but only sustainable and long-term, not a short-term ceasefire. Translated into plain English, there can be no ceasefire without recognition of Russia's occupation of Donbass and Ukraine's neutral status. Anything that doesn't fit this format is called fake news and information farce. Thus, long-term peace turns into a frozen conflict that Moscow can unfreeze at any moment. According to Reuters, Moscow handed Washington a memo confirming the previous conditions for a peace agreement. According to the publication, Russia demands full control over Donbass and non-aligned and neutral status for Ukraine. We're currently on a roller coaster with ups and downs. But Putin isn't on a roller coaster. He's on a train, and it's moving smoothly, never deviating from its track. It could be argued that it was the threat of Tomahawk missiles that prompted Putin to call and try to stop this process. But would this threat alone have changed the course of his train? Unlikely. So yes, more needs to be done, but it's important to temper expectations and understand that there are no quick fixes. According to the Wall Street Journal, Moscow and Washington are maintaining contacts at the level of foreign ministers and are continuing to develop the parameters for a possible meeting between Putin and Trump. Lavrov and Rubio plan to attend the Asian Summit in Malaysia. 2. Europe as a superfluous bystander. The key theme of the program is peace as a deal between the US and Russia, in which Europe and Ukraine have no place. Skabeeva emphasizes Washington and Moscow are maintaining contacts, preparing for a summit, while European sources are only sowing insinuations. In this film, the European Union is portrayed not as a union of democracies, but as a noisy chorus of warmongers preventing the strong from reaching agreement. The viewer is thus led to believe that real decisions are being made without Brussels, and that European states are hostage to their own principles. This creates the ideological backdrop for a new division of Europe, not physical, but political. Russia is once again speaking to America over the heads of Europeans, reminiscent of the old model of grand bargains during the Cold War. 3. The Budapest summit as a symbol of a new world. The story of the proposed meeting between Putin and Trump in Budapest plays a symbolic role. We want peace to return to Central Europe, declares Hungarian Minister Szijjártó. But this peace does not mean a return to stability, but rather the exclusion of Europe from its own security system. Budapest, in the Russian interpretation, becomes an anti-Brussels, a place where decisions are made not by rules, but by concepts, where the neutrality of neighbours is considered a victory for common sense, and the rejection of integration is an expression of sovereignty. In reality, this is a rehabilitation of old imperialism, disguised as realism. In this version of Europe, there are no rights or guarantees, only force and deals. 4. Strikes as an argument in negotiations. Amid talk of the summit, the news is dry. Strikes on Kyiv, Kharkiv, and Odessa. 3 thermal power plants damaged, the country without power. But this isn't news, it's diplomatic coverage. Russian television presents the destruction as a pressure factor that strengthens Moscow's position in the negotiations. A peace built on such arguments is a peace under blackmail. It's only possible when Europe agrees to measure the price of compromise in human lives, not principles. You've been on the Empire of Lies program. See you soon.